All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. So hello everyone and welcome to NCARB Live. Today we're going to talk about the updated demo exam and review the new digital whiteboard tool. We'll also explore some of the other features you'll see starting on December 14th and talk about exam strategies and answer your questions about preparing for the updated exam. I'm Jenny Kowecki and I'm joined by two of our exam experts, Michelle Cohn, our Assistant Vice President of Examination here at NCARB, and Nick Respecki, Manager of Examinations at NCARB. So we're so glad to have you all here today. Before we get into the details, Nick and Michelle, can you give our candidates a preview of what you hope they get out of today's webinar? Michelle, let's start with you.
Great, thanks Jenny, and hi everyone, glad to be here today. I hope that today everyone gets some great strategies to think about and prepare for not just their online proctored exams, but also for test center exams starting December 14th, so that everyone can really approach their exam with confidence and know that they can really focus on the content and not how to take the exam.
And I'm Nick Respecki. I'm a manager of examination here at NCARB. And similar to Michelle, we want you all to be comfortable with the updates to the exam, including the updates to the navigation, the break structure, and obviously the new digital whiteboard. And our focus here today is to sort of increase that comfort level that you will have. And as Michelle mentioned, we really hope you leave this webinar feeling comfortable with the updates so you can focus all of your energy on preparing for that exam content that's outlined in the ARE handbook, instead of worrying about the system that's actually delivering the exam. So hopefully you all leave with some good information today.
Great, thanks Michelle and Nick. So we look forward to sharing all of that and more with you all over the next hour. So viewers, you can submit your questions at any time using the Q&A tool on your screen. We encourage you to use that and not the raise hand feature, as that's where we're going to be getting our questions from. And I do encourage you to wait until our exam experts have finished going over their initial slides to ask your questions, because they might answer a lot of your questions up front. We're going to try to get to as many questions as we can, but we are going to focus on answering those questions about exam changes, navigation, features, and strategy. So we know you all have a lot of questions and concerns, and I ask that you help us find and answer as many questions as possible by only submitting your question one time using the Q&A tool. If we don't answer your question today, please feel free to contact us on our website or on the online community after the webinar. And if you need to sign off early, a recording will be available on our blog and our YouTube channel. So Nick and Michelle, why don't you walk us through some of those exam changes in the demo exam?
Great. So before we get going with answering all of your questions live, Michelle and I, we wanted to run through where we are today, what you can expect coming up over the course of the next month, and then what are these updates that we're really talking about with the ARE. So let's talk about the most critical date in this webinar today, and that's December 14th. So what's happening on that day? Online proctoring is going to be available to all ARE candidates. Now, that doesn't mean we're stopping the ability for candidates and you all to go into test centers and test in person. That's still going to be available. Michelle, do you want to talk specifically what this means and what this date means for all the candidates out there?
Yeah, absolutely, Nick. So on December 14th, that means any exams that are taken in person at a Prometric test center will be in the new format. Also on December 14th, that means candidates can begin scheduling their online proctored exams. And those are also scheduled through Prometric. So remember, we are staying with Prometric for until next summer, which we'll talk about later. But note that your online proctored exams and your test center exams will still be with Prometric. And starting on December 14th, the current ARE format that candidates are testing in today, that will no longer be available. So the last day in the current format is December 13th. December 14th is the first day of the new format. Now, we have gotten a lot of questions from candidates saying, well, I already have my exam scheduled for December 15th, December 16th, right after this new date. So does that mean that I can just log in and take it as an online proctored exam? I don't have to go to the test center anymore. So definitely want to clarify that no, your exam that is scheduled today is scheduled as a test center exam, because the scheduler for online proctored exams isn't available yet. That scheduler will turn on December 14th. So if you want to take an online proctored exam, you will need to, and you have an exam already scheduled, you will need to actually reschedule your exam on December 14th or later. So what we recommend for candidates, and remember, all of our rescheduling fees are currently waived. So what we recommend, if you already have an exam scheduled and you want to do it as an online proctored exam, go ahead and reschedule your exam for late December, January, just push it out. And then starting on December 14th, you can go back in, grab that appointment, and you can reschedule it as an online proctored appointment. So you don't have to cancel the exam and schedule a new one. You'll be actually able to reschedule from the test center mode into online proctored mode, again, starting on December 14th.
So Michelle, if I'm a candidate and I'm interested in online proctoring, since scheduling opens on the 14th, does that mean I can actually go in and take an exam on the 14th as well with online proctoring?
No, so starting on the 14th, that is the day the scheduler opens up. So that's a really great question, Nick. So that means that if you do not have an exam scheduled right now and you want to do an online proctored exam, then great news. Starting December 14th, you can log into your NCARB record, schedule your next division, and you will see a pop-up to say, do you want to schedule it at a test center or online proctored? So you can select that online proctored option and go ahead and find the next available date and time for when you want to schedule. So you might be able to find a date and time even for later that week, potentially, or it might be, within the next few weeks. It really depends on proctor availability. Just as when you're scheduling a test center exam, it depends on seat availability for, how soon you're able to get in there.
So let's talk about the exam changes, what is changing and what isn't come December 14th. So the first thing that you all probably have seen in our communications out to you all via email, via the updates to the ARE handbook, is we are reducing the number of items across the board in all 6 divisions, between 15 and 20 items. And if you're interested in knowing those exact item numbers, recommend go to our updated ARE handbook. It's going to break down the new numbers you can expect to see. The structure of breaks, that's going to change. As of today, if I was to go into a test center, I would be giving a 25-minute break that I can take. Now that break time isn't flexible in terms of if I only use 20 of it, it doesn't mean I have 5 minutes remaining. So we're going to add some additional flexibility with the breaks, as well as we're going to allow you to take multiple, and the times are actually increasing. You'll get between 30 and 45 minutes with the new break structure. The navigation on the exam is changing, and you all have probably heard a lot about that as well. And when we say navigation, that is in terms of items that you actually have viewed following a break, you're going to be able to not view any longer. So those items will be locked when you're returning from a break. Michelle's going to outline that in a few slides and show you exactly what you can expect to see in test centers when it comes to items locking and viewing items. We will be establishing new cut scores for all 6 divisions. That's going to happen as soon as we get 400 administrations per division. And so that's going to begin, the cut score process will begin as soon as we get those 400 administrations. We expect at this point, it could be about 4 weeks, but that number obviously is dependent on the number of testers per division. We've introduced the digital whiteboard, and I'm sure you all are familiar with that as well. And so scratch paper, which you all have in test centers today, will no longer be available beginning December 14th. We are also moving the exam to the 2018 IBC. So the International Code Council, typically every 3 years, they introduce new codes. So the ARE right now is based on the 2015 IBC. So beginning that December 14th, we're moving to 2018. This is not, we're aligning this with turning on online proctoring, but this is something typically we do as regular maintenance on the exam. We are always one version behind what ICC has released. So as they're releasing the 2021 codes now, we are moving to 2018. And this is going to happen again when they release the 2024 codes, we'll move to 2021. So this is regular exam maintenance for us. We've reduced rescheduling fees. Now, the breakdown of what those fees are in our ARE 5.0 guidelines. Also, just a good note for everyone, we've actually, there are no rescheduling fees between now and January 1st. So you're free to go in and reschedule free of charge. And then finally, what is also changing, we have a new and improved PDF reader that we'll be talking about here in a few slides. Michelle, do you want to talk about what isn't changing?
Yes, absolutely. So exam content is the first thing on the list. Nick just mentioned some updates related to IBC updates. there were just some minor updates related to the move from 2015 to 2018. Other than that, the exam content is all staying the same. Division structure, we still have 6 divisions to the ARE. The fees are staying the same. The rolling clock is staying the same. As a reminder, we extended all valid past divisions as of last March. Everyone now has a 15-month extension on their rolling clock. So, but that's the 5-year policy on the rolling clock does remain the same. The 60-day retake policy and rescheduling timeframes, once those fees get reinstated January 1, we'll still have those timeframes of no rescheduling less than 4 days out, and then the additional rescheduling timeframes with the graduated fees. So all of that is staying the same.
So let's talk about some of the new resources that NCARB has recently released. So if you received our email last Thursday, we launched a new full-length demonstration exam, and we're gonna walk you all through that here in a second. We also updated some of our ARE test prep videos. So if you go to our YouTube channel, you'll notice that we've updated the strategies video, the exam navigation video, and then there are 6 divisional overviews that we also updated with the new item counts. We also introduced a new whiteboard video that we recommend checking out prior to going to the demonstration exam and playing around with the tool.
So the big announcement that I'm sure many of you saw last Thursday is that that new demonstration exam is available. And so how do you get to it? So that is going to be right inside your NCARB account. As soon as you log into My NCARB, you'll see in the lower right-hand corner a link to the current demonstration exam we've left in place there because we know some of you are testing between now and December 13th. But then the second link there, this demonstration exam with online proctoring option, obviously that applies to the exam that will be launching as of December 14th. Now, I do want to point out here, this is inside everyone's My NCARB account. That includes your supervisors, other architects that you might work with. And so we've always provided the 5.0 demonstration exam in that way, and now providing this second link as well. So others in your office who are just curious about what does the exam look and feel like right now, and what will it feel like soon, these links are really there for everyone to be able to test that out. And you can see on your screen there, you can go ahead and jot this down. This is a new link that is available specifically for this new demonstration exam with the online proctoring option. So without even logging into your account, you can just type this into your browser and get right into that demo exam. Some key features that you will see inside that demonstration exam. It is a full-length exam. We have heard from you guys over the years about only seeing 20 questions in the demonstration exam. So this new full-length exam has 75 questions. I will point out they are pulled from across all 6 divisions. So this does not replicate just a 1 division exam. It does give you that breadth of content that you might experience across all 6 divisions of the exam. We have a new item type that you will see, and I don't think we've talked about this too much, but I do want to mention it. Currently, candidates are used to seeing a multiple choice item where you then receive 4 response options, and you pick one of those options to best answer the question. Well, starting December 14th, we are also going to have 3 option multiple choice items. So you'll see your question, and then you'll have just 3 options to choose from. Again, pick one of those 3 to best answer the question. So if you're taking the exam and you think, oh my gosh, I only see 3 response options, what happened to the 4th option? The exam is broken. I just want to assure everyone it's not broken. We actually are going to have some 3 option multiple choice and some 4 option multiple choice. So whatever you see on your screen, that is the options that you should be choosing from for that particular item. And why does that make a difference? Well, because now you have 1 fewer option to read and to have to think about. So just keep that in mind. There's a little bit of a benefit there to just having 3 option multiple choice. All of the other item types that you're used to seeing in 5.0, those will remain the same, again, moving forward. The demonstration exam will have 2 full-length case studies. It, of course, has the digital whiteboard, and Nick is going to be walking us through that in a little bit here. the full break and navigation functionality. I'm going to talk more about that in a few minutes. And then finally, that new PDF reader that Nick mentioned, and I think he's going to show us that right now.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. So the new PDF reader, and this is something we've heard from candidates over the course of ARE 5.0, is resources sometimes being cloud-based take a little bit of time to load. So what NCARB has done is we've looked at and we've introduced a new PDF reader that we hope is much faster at loading these case study resources. All of our testing internally has shown that it is substantially faster, and hopefully that's going to help you all who have struggled with the timing part of answering case study questions. It also has an enhanced text searchability. So in the current PDF reader, you can only search for one keyword at a time. This new tool allows you to search for multiple words at one time. And also it's introduced a thumbnail view option. I think this is super helpful if you're clicking through a bunch of pages and you're looking for something specific within a code or zoning ordinance. It's a new option for you. So we hope that all of these new enhancements to the PDF reader will expedite and help you to answer those case study questions more efficiently. Now, this is available right now in the new ARE demonstration examination. So if you haven't tried it out, highly recommend you go play around with it, become comfortable with it. And also note that the references available across the exam. And so that's by clicking on that reference tab at the top menu bar while you're taking the exam, which has all the formulas, structural formulas, plumbing, electrical. That also is utilizing this new PDF reader, which should also help with that searchability and navigation while using those resources.
All right, so let's take a look now at the demo exam itself and what that new functionality and navigation is that I was mentioning. So when you open up the demonstration exam with the online proctoring option, you will see this introductory screen. It's pretty similar to what we have in the current exam. There's some text in here that's tailored specific for the demonstration exam. So I go ahead and be sure to read through this. One thing I will note is when you are taking your actual exam, in the upper left-hand corner there, you will actually see the name of your division that you're testing in and your name. So the settings that are in there right now are specific for it being a demonstration exam. And on this next screen, you will see the ARE candidate agreement. This is a really important document that I hope everyone has read previously during all the previous times that they've tested. Always good to read through that and keep that fresh in your memory. This document is also available on our website. It is in the ARE 5.0 guidelines. And a more recent change is that you actually see it now every time you schedule your exam. So go ahead and take a look at it here, but certainly you will have had the opportunity to review this before you sit down to take your test. And then finally, some final testing reminders. This screen looks pretty similar to what you'll see in the test center today, except that now we have a second section so that we have final reminders if you're at the test center and final reminders if you are taking an online proctored exam. So go ahead and take a look at those now, certainly before you actually get into your online proctored test, just so you're familiar with the reminders here. All right, so then once you click the next button on that last screen, then you are inside your exam. So you are now testing. You can see in the upper right corner that testing clock there that has now started counting down. And the first screen that you're presented with is this exam summary. Now, some of you who've tested before might be surprised to see this and you're thinking, wait, that's something I see at the end of my exam. Why am I seeing it at the beginning? Well, we're going to talk about this in just a moment, but it's important to remember that any items that you look at before you go on break are going to be locked when you come back from break. So to avoid inadvertently exposing you to an item that you didn't mean to see quite yet, everyone is going to be presented with this exam summary screen right from the get-go. So from here, you will then choose your first item that you want to see. You can go ahead and click on question 1 if you want to go right into the discrete items, or you can scroll down if you want to see the case studies first. You'll still have the opportunity to do that. Now, when you look at an item and answer it, then you'll see it shows up in green there as completed. If you look at an item and you don't answer it, then it'll show up in red as incomplete. You can still have the ability to mark items for review later, and you can see the flag there on those items. Now, if you choose to take a break, you would do that from this exam summary screen. And I think we have a, oh, sorry, just the zooming in here real quick here on what those item statuses look like again. So as a reminder, if an item says unseen in that exam summary, it has not been viewed. If it says incomplete, that means that you have looked at it but not answered it. If it says completed, that means you have looked and answered it. So when you come back from a break, only those unseen items will be still available to you. Everything else will be locked and you won't be able to view them or answer them again. So when you are ready to take your break, you would click on that break button. And then this pop-up comes up just as a double check that you really do want to go out on your break with that reminder about which items will be locked when you come back. So from a strategy perspective, it would be certainly would be a good idea if you are the type of person who likes to review your answers one last time to consider thinking about maybe I'm just going to look at 25 items and then go on a break. And so you review those 25 items, feel confident about them, and then you go on your break so you don't have to worry about them being locked when you get back. You will note that warning there in blue about notifying the proctor. So obviously that's a new thing in an online proctoring modality, is that you will need to notify that online proctor to let them know you're going on a break. If you take a break and then just walk away from your camera, you will be flagged for a potential violation. So you are allowed to take a break, but you do need to let the proctor know why you're walking away from your camera. This is the screen that will pop up, so you will know for sure that you are correctly on a break. Again, you'll just notify the proctor, and then you can get up from your desk, take a break, whatever it is that you need to do. You'll notice there's a countdown clock here, just reminding you of your break time. And as Nick mentioned, that break time is extended, either 30 minutes or 45 minutes, depending on the division. And you don't have to use all of that time all at once. So if you want to take a break, come back, and then be able to take a second break, you'll just want to plan your time out wisely for that. And then finally, you come back to your test. Again, you'll come right back into this exam summary and you'll see those items are now locked.
Okay, so let's take a look at an item and talk about the tools that will be available to you. So at face value, you might look at this, and if you're a current tester and you think, oh, you know, it looks relatively similar, and you're right. The highlight option is still there as it is today. The strike through, the calculator, the references. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll see the time, you'll see the question you're on, the break button, the next, previous, and finally the exam summary. So it looks very similar. And the tool that we want to talk about is the whiteboard. So the whiteboard is a new addition. And as we mentioned, beginning December 14th, physical scratch paper will be won't be available in person or in online proctored environments. So this digital whiteboard, to open it up, you basically click on the button and it's going to open it up right on your screen. Now, this window can move around freely. You can place it below this question. I could place it to the right, as I've done in the screen here. It can be resized. So by dragging the corners of the whiteboard, you can increase the size or decrease the size based on what you're trying to include in the whiteboard at that given time. Now, the advantages of this whiteboard is you can also open the calculator at the same time or open the references tool, and you can basically have tiles across your screen, allowing you to potentially plug in a calculation, as you can see from this item on the screen, into the calculator, and then include those notes over in the whiteboard. Now, to add content to the whiteboard, there are really three key tools that you can do it with. So the first one being a pencil tool. So this is basically a freehand pencil tool that is very effective for making basic shapes. I would not recommend trying to write out text with this tool. You're going to find that it's extremely difficult. If you're interested in jotting any notes down, text, dimensions, calculations, recommend using the text tool. That will allow you to type out using your keyboard very efficiently, effectively, and quick. And you can go ahead and use that tool as well. Third tool being shapes. So when we say shapes, circles, squares, triangles, arrows, and also just straight lines if you're interested in using lines for anything based on the question you're answering. So you can see the example here. Basic shapes you can do with these tools. Now, with any of the options, there is a status bar located below the top menu bar, and it'll include other options like color, opacity. Depending on what object you're working with, you can also do different color borders and border style as well. Other tools to highlight, you can zoom in and out on your whiteboard by using the zoom in and out feature on the upper right-hand corner of the screen. There's also, to the right of the zoom out option, there's a pan tool, which will allow you to pan around the whiteboard if needed. Pages. Now, we know many candidates are going to need more than one page. So you all are free to add as many pages as needed. Now, this page, when you go to add pages, basically it's going to max out based on your screen real estate. So we successfully on our team, we sat down, we added 175 pages. We still had room to go to add additional pages. So use that to your advantage, whether you want to have one page per item, you want to come up with a system of adding pages. Adding pages is a pretty effective way to get additional space for additional notes while testing. And then finally, the close button. This will close the whiteboard after you're done using it on a question. Now, I want to make note that when you close it and you go to the next item, no information is lost in this whiteboard. The only way something will be deleted or removed is if you erase it or you delete the actual page. And that includes after breaks. When you return from a break, all of your notes, drawings, sketches, they're all going to be included and saved on the whiteboard.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Nick, for walking us through that whiteboard. Just want to close out here with just some updates on the timeline. So early December, coming up here shortly after Thanksgiving, NCARB will be releasing additional resources, really focusing on setting up that online proctored testing environment, because we know that will be top of mind for all of you looking towards your first online proctored exam. On December 14th, as we have mentioned, is the date that the updated exam and the launches in the test center and the online proctoring scheduling option becomes available, and every exam will be delivered in that new format. About 4 weeks later, as we had mentioned before, we expect the cut score process to be finalized, and that's when we'll be releasing those first batches of score reports. After that date, score reports will process within a couple days, as many of you are used to. And then finally, next summer, 2021, our exam delivery will migrate to PSI. So that is a different test delivery company. As I had mentioned before, we are with Prometric and both the test center and the online proctored delivery until then. And we will be releasing a lot more information about the move to PSI in 2021. So you can keep an eye out for that, but certainly nothing to really get bogged down in at the moment. Jenny, I think that's all we've got for our presentation here.
Great. Thanks so much for all that information. So now we're going to transition to Q&A for the next half hour or so. As I mentioned earlier, we are going to focus on questions about exam changes and strategy and helping you succeed on the test. So you can submit your questions using the Q&A tool on your screen. We're not going to be using the raise hand function. So if you have a question, be sure to submit it through the Q&A tool. So our first question, can I open the whiteboard in a new window?
Yeah, I can take that one, Michelle. So the way the whiteboard works is it has to be within the constraints of that interface. So we've seen the question, can I drag it to a second screen? Can I drag it off of the screen so it's separate and not overlapping the actual item I'm looking at? And the answer is no, it has to be within the constraints of the testing window. And both in-person and online proctored exams. Regarding dragging that window to a second screen, as you probably have all seen within our ARE guidelines, you're only allowed to have one screen. And so that it's limited real estate from that perspective. And that also applies to the test center as well. It is one screen. The whiteboard is constrained within the exam interface window.
Thanks, Nick. So our next question is there a specific time of day on December 14th when online proctoring will launch and candidates can start scheduling?
That is a great question. I believe it's like early that day. I actually don't have a specific time, but I think it is as early as possible that switchover will happen. So I'm sure we can provide more info. So if you want to be the first in line for that scheduling option, but it won't be like a midday or an afternoon thing. It will be like a early in the day type change.
Thanks, Michelle. So can we simply copy the result from the calculator or the question to the whiteboard text box? So can candidates copy paste text from the calculator tool to the whiteboard tool, I think is the question.
Currently, I'm going to say it's not, you can't do that. But I think it's actually a really good idea that I think at NCARB, potentially for future releases of the whiteboard and enhancements that we do, that's definitely something that we can consider on future releases. That's actually a great idea.
Okay. Can candidates use a touchscreen tablet to write on the whiteboard?
Unfortunately, Jenny, the answer to that one is no. And the whiteboard is just not built for use with a tablet or stylus type tool. I'll also point out that the online proctor delivery does require you to use a software by Prometric. It's called ProProctor. And so you will be downloading that to your computer. And when you launch your exam in the online delivered format, that software will launch and actually lock down everything else on your computer. And so if your stylus requires software in order to be operable, then the stylus won't work anymore because ProProctor prevents the use of other programs on your computer while you're in the process of testing.
Okay, our next question is, does NCARB see what we put on the whiteboard?
Nope, not at all.
All right, so since you all are exam experts, have really tested the whiteboard extensively, do you have any tips or insights on ways that candidates can use the whiteboard most effectively?
And Michelle, I can take a stab at that, and then you can chime in after with your perspective. But from my experience playing with the tool as an architect, I think if you go in with the idea that it's going to be the exact same as your physical scratch paper, it's not going to be very effective. The tool, you need to use the features within the tool effectively. An example is text. If you try to write out text with the pencil tool, it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to be really difficult, and it's going to be extremely frustrating. I tried it, and it just doesn't work. Instead, use the text tool is a quick way to insert text. Keyboards are very effective at typing quickly for taking notes. So that's really what I have learned so far. And I think the second part of it is the intent of this software isn't to be Revit, Rhino, SketchUp, any of the softwares you might actually use within your firms to design. That's not the intent. But what it can do is it can do quick sketches that will then allow you to answer questions on the ARE. So try not to make the tool something it isn't. And don't worry if your sketches aren't pretty. As Michelle said, we never see it. It doesn't matter what you put onto that whiteboard. It also doesn't impact your scoring. So if your sketches are really, really ugly, but you get the question correct, that's all that matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that briefly. And maybe this is just echoing Nick, using the right tool for what it is that you intend to do on the whiteboard will certainly make it most effective. I mean, we've heard candidates say, gosh, that eraser just seems like kind of laggy. And yeah, that's something that we're actively working on with our developers. But in the meantime, like Nick mentioned, you can add 175 tabs. There aren't even 175 items on any of the exams. So, rather than worrying about erasing stuff, feel free to just add another tab, get a whole new blank whiteboard, and really just kind of practicing with it now will help you figure out what are the strategies that work for you so that when you get to the test center or you get to your online proctored exam, you can just jump right in and focus on the content of your questions that you're answering.
All right, thank you both. Those are some great tips. So a follow-up to a previous question, we know NCARB isn't going to see what's on the whiteboard, but does your proctor see what's on the whiteboard?
Again, no. And actually the Prometric proctor doesn't see anything that's on your screen. So nope, that whiteboard is not viewable to anyone but you.
Okay. If you are at a testing facility, can you still use physical paper and pencil?
Unfortunately, you cannot. You can use it up until December 13th when the current version is going to end, but beginning on December 14th, for consistency across the board, regardless if you're testing online or in person, you will be given the whiteboard as your way of sketching, taking notes throughout the exam.
Great. And I think you answered this question earlier, but it's a great thing to clarify. So will what's on the whiteboard ever be erased during the exam, like if you came back from a break?
No, it will not, unless you choose to erase content either by using the eraser tool or using the X to delete a page. Your notes on that whiteboard, you can carry through your entire exam. So if I was taking the exam and I had a bunch of notes from my first 20 items, I decided to take a break. Even though those items are locked, those notes will still live within my whiteboard when I return from a break.
Okay, our next question. It seems like the digital whiteboard tool will take some time from the exam, especially if it's a long scenario. So are the questions on the exam going to be more to the point so candidates can maximize their time?
Well, as we mentioned before, the content of the exam is not changing. So I don't want to say that you'll see different questions in response to the whiteboard. But I can say that through our exam development process, our volunteer architects who we work with on a regular basis to develop and review content, those volunteer architects have been actively reviewing the exam with the whiteboard to really think, now that we have this new tool, to really think more critically about ensuring that there's some coordination between the exams and the tools available now to answer the questions on the exam. I also want to say that, yes, it might take some time at first to get used to the whiteboard. But as Nick mentioned, the new PDF reader is a lot quicker. And so that will should be able to save candidates some time. Also, we've reduced the number of items on the exam. We've slightly reduced the time, but we've proportionally reduced more of the actual items, meaning that you'll actually have more time per item in the new delivery format. So we're hopeful that those various pieces will even each other out. But that's something that we'll be taking a look at, certainly as part of the cut score process when the exam first launches.
Great. So Michelle, you just mentioned the cut score, and we've been getting a lot of questions about cut scores and score reports. So first, what is a cut score?
Great question. So a cut score you can think of as essentially the threshold that you have to pass in order to pass your exam. So very simply, it is the number of questions that you need to get right. And if you meet the cut score or exceed it in terms of the number of questions you answered correctly, then you pass. If you answer fewer questions correctly than is what is the cut score is, then you'll fail. So that's it. The cut score does not relate to a minimum pass rate with the exam. It is not the minimum number of passes that we're wanting. There is no, NCARB does not have any sort of pass rate that we're trying to reach. It truly is just, here's how many items you need to get correct. And that is the only thing that is set with the ARE.
Great. So candidates are wanting to know, will there be provisional feedback at the end of exams by mid-January? And if not, when should we expect to receive results?
I can answer that one, Michelle. So when we turn on online proctoring on December 14th, you're not going to have the option at the end of your exam to see provisional feedback. And the reason being is because we don't have a cut score yet. So we don't know if you have likely failed or likely passed at that point. So that time frame, we're saying 4 weeks. So you won't know your score for that period of time. Now that 4 weeks, it's not a hard number for us. It's by looking at previous volumes of testers, we can determine, and we're hopeful that it will take roughly 4 weeks, but it's really dependent on the number of testers per division. And as we mentioned earlier, we need 400 test administrations per division to set a cut score for a division. So what that means is if we get 800 testers on practice management within the first 2 weeks, we're going to be able to set that cut score after that period of time, versus if we only have 100 testers in construction evaluation after 4 weeks, it could be longer. So it's really, it's dictated by the number of testers, that time frame. So what's going to happen is when a division meets that threshold, we're going to work with our psychometricians, the examination committee at NCARB, which is a committee of volunteer architects. And finally, that is going to get approved by our board of directors. At that point, we will release all the cut scores for the division that the cut score has been set for. So that's sort of our timeline. As we get closer to December 14th, hopefully NCARB can give you all an idea, maybe through our ARE community. I know we did that previously when we transitioned from 4.0 to 5.0, of how the administration numbers are looking, so you can get a better idea of the length of time you'll have to wait for your score.
Great. So I know candidates have expressed a lot of concern over how some of these exam changes are going to impact their performance. And the cut score process really can put some of those concerns at ease. So do you want to talk about how the cut score might change based on candidate performance?
Well, I think that we can't, in some ways we won't know till we see. I think that I wouldn't expect a huge change in the cut score, because the intent here, of course, is to equate the exams delivered currently with the exams delivered after December 14th, right? Because we want to make sure that we're assessing candidates to an equal level, and that we're keeping the difficulty about the same from one to the other. Obviously, the exam after December 14th in all of our divisions, there's going to be fewer items. So sure, the cut score will probably reduce somewhat because there's fewer items to answer. So you probably will need to answer fewer items correctly. I mean, not just, kind of simple correlation there. But beyond that, again, like we've talked about, there are, the whiteboard that might introduce more of an obstacle, whereas that new PDF reader and having more time per item should reduce some obstacles. So again, we're going to be monitoring that really carefully during the cut score process, with the goal of just maintaining a standard level of difficulty. Again, we want to be able to treat all of our candidates fairly. And so candidates testing today, candidates testing in January, we want to be able to treat all of those candidates fairly. And I will just throw out there as well, our member boards are relying on us to treat everyone fairly. Again, this exam is used by the member boards to, as part of that process of how they award licensure to candidates. So it's really our responsibility to our member boards to have that fair process to ensure the validity and reliability of the exam.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. So back to the demo exam. Will the demo exam give you a score or tell you which questions you answered correctly?
I can answer that one. So the demo exam is unscored, but what we've done is every item you're going to find an answer to in the ARE handbook, or you're going to see there's a post on our ARE community that includes the keys for 10 of those questions. Reason why they're not all in the handbook is, Michelle mentioned earlier, we moved from a 20-item demo to a full-length demo. And we actually didn't have enough items in our handbook to make a full-length demo. So what we did is we actually pulled some retired items from our exam, and we included them on that demo. So if you're interested, most of the questions, as I mentioned, so there are 75 total, 65 of those are in the handbook. You'll have to find them because they're spread across all 6 divisions. So as you go through, you can look for the items. They'll include a rationale, the correct response, and then also they'll break down the cognitive level. And that's really important to understand with our ARE items. The other 10 you can find on the community. Our hope is with future releases of the handbook, we're going to try to add those additional 10 items into the handbook so they're all in one location to be able to find the keys and rationales for.
Great. So after candidates answer a question, will the exam go back to the exam summary page, or will it go to the next question?
Oh, that is a great question, Jenny. As I mentioned during the presentation earlier, when you first start the exam, the first screen you see is that exam summary. Once you then click on whatever item you want to start with, and again, you can start with the discrete items, or you can scroll down in the exam summary and you'll see the case study questions farther down. You can start right in with the case study questions. Once you pick which section you want to start with, Then every time you answer a question and hit next, you'll just go to the next question. So you won't keep going back to that exam summary screen after that point. You'll of course have the option to go to that. We didn't go through every screen that you'll see in that demonstration exam, but just as now, when you're on an item, still in that lower corner, you will still see that button to be able to go into the exam summary screen at any time that you choose. I will add that when you get to the last discrete item, so again, those standalone items, when you get to that last standalone item, the system will automatically take you to the exam summary screen. That is there on purpose because some of you might want to take a break before you go into the case study. So again, knowing that case study questions can sometimes be more involved. Some of you might be thinking, I got to take a mental break. I need to take a bio break. I just need to walk around the block, whatever it is, you might want to take a break before you switch into the case studies. We present that exam summary screen to you purposefully to say, hey, you're about to enter into your first case study. Do you want to take a break before we show you that case study question number 1? So that's there very much on purpose as a benefit for candidates. So again, when you try out the demonstration exam, you'll be able to see all of that functionality.
Great. So speaking of breaks, what's the best way for candidates to strategize around the new break policy?
That's a good question. And I will give one approach, Michelle, and then I'll let you give a different approach. So one approach might be the amount of break time you get, either 30 or 45 minutes, it's totally optional. You do not need to use the break time if you don't want to use the break time. So you look at a division like practice management being, we're at 65 items. You might be thinking, I can actually go through all 65 items without taking a break. That's an option. You could do that. Another option would be for some of the longer divisions like PPD and PDD, which are 100 items each. You might choose to do 20 items, take a break. Maybe it's a 10-minute break, do another 20 items, take another break, do another 20 items. And so that's a strategy that could be effective for those that like various breaks throughout their exam. I would say if you do break it into sections like 20 items, just remember, if you're a tester now that likes to look at all of your items, and then you like to go back and look at them again and take a double check. If you're looking at groups of 20 items, you might want to look at that group of 20 items, go to the exam summary screen, click back to that first item, look at those 20 again, then take a break from that point. So it'll give you a chance to double check those items. Michelle, are there any other strategies that you can think of that might be helpful?
I think you covered some great ideas there, Nick. I guess the thing I'd say to candidates is try out these strategies. That's one reason that we made that demonstration exam 75 items. We give you 3 hours on that demonstration exam. So you really have time there to just feel, what is it like to sit down here for 3 hours and think about this many questions in a row? So I think just try it out there, figure out what is the strategy that works best for you. If I were a candidate taking this, I would certainly take that approach personally of saying, I'm going to take 20, 30 questions, whatever it is, review them. And now I don't have to worry about them anymore. I can take my break and, start in on question 31 or, whatever my setup is there. I can certainly see for some candidates, they might just want to power through and, just get it done, especially in those shorter exams. So I think my strategy advice is try it out, come up with the strategy that works for you, and really, look at the more flexible break policy as what it is, that we're trying to provide flexibility to candidates, moving forward with exam delivery.
Great, thank you. So our next question, why is NCARB eliminating paper from in-person testing?
All right, well, that's really from a security standpoint. And I will say that's something that we had been thinking about for some time. Security is a topic that our exam committee, Nick mentioned the exam committee a few minutes ago, and security is a topic that they look at every year. So it is not just about the switch to online proctoring. That being said, did we speed up the timeline for removing paper and pencil? Yeah, we did with the move to online proctoring, but it's something that we had been thinking about, and we've been looking at what other test publishers do as well in terms of best practices within the testing environment. So we did look at some different options for how we wanted to approach scratch paper and changing that. But really the overriding concern was that clean desk is certainly the best approach from a security perspective, both in the test center and in a remote environment. Also, I just want to point out that if you were writing on scratch paper, you can see if I'm looking down at my desk here, suddenly my eyes are now looking down. And for a proctor, that's going to be a red flag for that proctor, and they're probably gonna start chatting with you or speaking to you to say, hey, what's going on there? What else are you looking at right now? You can certainly talk to the proctor and let them know what's happening and allay their concern. But at the same time, it's a thing that they would be interrupting you about. So to the extent where we can keep everything on the screen for you as a candidate, that is actually more helpful to you in this online proctoring mode, that you wouldn't inadvertently raise the concerns of the proctor.
Okay, so you mentioned clean desk policy. I think most candidates understand what that means, but we do get a lot of questions about what are the general requirements for the rest of my online proctoring testing space?
Yeah, and I can give everyone a little bit of info on that. I think the first critical piece of information is this could be your home, but it doesn't have to be your home. Many of you work in architecture firms that might have a space that you could actually use for online proctoring, or maybe your local AA chapters have a space that can be used for online proctoring. I think some key characteristics of that space is it needs to be private. It needs to be well lit so the proctor can actually see around the space to see if there's any security issues. It needs to be walled. I know that sounds very basic, but you can't take this exam in a picnic pavilion outside. It needs to be an inside wall spaced. Those are some basic characteristics. And then when it comes to clutter, we recommend clean up anything within your space that could potentially be a security concern for a proctor. So if you have a bookcase that has a ton of stuff on it, we recommend covering it up with a sheet or cleaning it prior to logging in for your exam. So look at your space and think, are there any security concerns within this space, or are there any privacy concerns? And that also would apply to windows. We all know architects love full height glazing within offices. They just love glass. If you're working and you want to take it within an office that has full size glass, that is also, it's a privacy issue, security issue. So you would need to cover those up, whether you use rolls of paper or whether you use sheets, to make sure you have a private workspace to take your exam in. Michelle, are there other characteristics, I guess, of the environment that might be critical?
No, you covered the big ones. And like we mentioned, in early December, we're going to be releasing a lot more information about setting up your online proctored environment. I know we have heard already from some AIA chapters and from firms looking to be able to create an environment for their candidates. And so that's something that you can even proactively, right now, really, speak with your AIA chapter if they haven't thought about this. Talk to leadership at your firm, say, is there a room that we can just block out for testing once in a while? And, start getting ahead of this. It's a really great thing to see that support from the professional community. And so to the extent that candidates can also remind their supervisors and their AIA chapter leaders about this, again, NCARB will be providing a lot more information, with some more detailed notes about setting up that space.
And I believe, Michelle, we're in the process of creating two additional videos that we're going to be adding to our YouTube channel that are going to talk about this topic specifically, setting up the test environment. So look out for those early December.
Okay, great. So it is 3:55, but we still have a lot of questions left. So we're going to plan to stick around for 10 to 15 minutes longer to answer some more of your questions. And if you do have to sign off, just remember you can watch the video on our YouTube channel later. So our next question is, does NCARB have plans to improve the Whiteboard tool?
Well, that's, gosh, we've just barely launched it. But yes, we talk with our developers on a regular basis. I am in all of those meetings, so I can say we talk regularly with the developers. And absolutely, we do take into account technical issues that might be occurring, certainly things that might need a more immediate fix, and then enhancements. Like I know Nick answered a question earlier about potentially copying and pasting, say, formulas from the calculator. And so that is something else that we might be looking at down the road.
And that I'll add, Michelle, and it doesn't just go for the whiteboard. All of our tools and functionality of the software, we are constantly iterating and working with our developer to make it better with those enhancements. And one example is the PDF reader now. We have heard from candidates on our communities about they wish it was faster. And so we do read those posts. We listen to, our candidates when it comes to some of those concerns. So we are constantly trying to improve the testing experience for you all that are taking exams. So.
Yep.
Great. Our next question, does the calculator work with the numeric keypad on your keyboard?
It does. It does work with the numeric keypad. I would recommend that if you are taking one remote, I'm looking at my keyboard here. I don't have one. Probably for efficiency's sake, if I was taking it online, I would get a different keyboard, one that actually has the number pad. It can really expedite the process of doing calculations instead of punching in the individual numbers across the top of the keyboard. But and it's much more effective and efficient than using mouse clicks to input numbers into your calculator.
All right. So when online proctoring launches, will there be limited time slots available? Is it on a first come, first served basis?
So yes, online proctoring appointments are available based on proctor availability. So meaning there has to be a proctor who has an open slot in their schedule, essentially, to proctor your exam. That being said, the times available are going to be much more extensive than what you're used to at a test center, right? I mean, test centers are oftentimes 9 to 5-ish, regular business hours. Many are open on Saturdays. Some might be open on Sundays, but oftentimes it's you're taking time off of work in order to take that exam. With the online proctoring option, those exams are proctors are potentially available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if the best testing option for you is an evening appointment, and I personally could not take an exam at 8 o'clock at night, but if you can, know that there would be a proctor available for that, and you would be able to sign up for that time slot. Certainly weekend availability, you should see more availability than you would in a test center, which will be another great thing for our candidates. So yeah, I do think candidates are going to see more options for scheduling at a day and time that really suits their schedule.
Great. Can you talk a little bit about the 360-degree webcam requirements and also the $50 rebate that candidates have heard about?
Yeah, so I can take the first part of this about the webcam. So if you go and look at the NCARB guidelines, the section that talks about the technology requirements or technical specifications for online proctoring, and also if you go to the ProProctor user guide, which is published by Prometric, it talks about the webcam. And now in Prometric's user guide, it doesn't specifically state that you need an external webcam, but NCARB is requiring you to have an external webcam. But what we mean by that is a non-integrated webcam. So if you have a laptop with a webcam, that's an integrated webcam. You can't use that for remote proctoring. If you have an iMac or a screen that has an integrated webcam, you can't use that for online proctoring. But you will need to get an external webcam. Typically what they are is they have a cord, they plug into your USB on your computer. The reason why we want it to be external is that you'll be asked by the readiness agent when you go to check in for your online proctored exams to show them your environment. And that's a 360-degree view. It doesn't mean you have to have a 360-degree camera. Those are extremely expensive, not requiring those at all. Basically, we mean you can pick up that camera off of the top of your screen and you can show all areas of your day, including back at your computer screen and under your desk. So that's what we mean by the 360-degree camera. And Michelle, I'll let you talk about the $50 MasterCard.
Yeah, absolutely. So that external webcam, I can vouch for having tested myself using an old Logitech webcam that is probably 15 years old, and it worked just fine. So if you have an old webcam, around your house or your apartment that you're thinking, gosh, why am I still holding on to this thing? Well, now is the time. So that should still work fine. You'll obviously want to test that using the Prometric system check that will be available to you. But if you don't have one, NCARB recognizes that this might be a hardship for some people needing to buy some new technology in order to take that online proctored division. So when you sign up for your first online proctored exam, you will receive an email from a third-party company with a prepaid card for $50, right? And so that will give you the option to have that, that money that you can use to purchase that webcam to kind of offset maybe some of that cost burden for taking that online proctoring. This is available to everyone who schedules their first online proctored division. So you don't have to tell us up front if you already have a webcam or if you need to buy one. Everyone who schedules their first online proctored division will receive this prepaid credit card, right after they schedule that exam. And so that really is there for you to be able to, just get your space set up, be sure that you can meet those technical requirements. And so you can, know that you will have that once you schedule your exam.
Great. Does the demo test always have new questions, or does it repeat questions?
On the demo exam, so there are 75 questions. They're all unique. There are no duplicates within the exam. But if you take it twice, you're going to see the same questions the second time. It's always the same set of 75 questions. What it does do is it randomizes every time. And that's exactly how the exam works in test centers. Even with the same set of questions, it will randomly deliver them. So your question number 1, the second time you take it, might be question number 10. And so, but it is always the same set of 75 questions.
Okay. One question we've been getting a lot is, can candidates copy paste from the question or from the reference material onto the whiteboard?
So no, they wouldn't be able to do that. But like Nick mentioned, that might be the topic of a future enhancement down the road. That's something that we would need to look at with our developers, and as well from just a test security standpoint in terms of, copying from an exam. But, there might be some opportunities with calculator, with equations. And so that's something that will be, is not available now, but is something that we might be able to look into down the road.
So earlier when we talked about breaks, you mentioned that when you take a break, you have to inform your proctor that you're going on a break. So how do candidates do that?
Nick, did you want to?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say, when you take your exam, you will have a chat box in the upper right corner of your screen, and that is your tool for reaching your ProProctor proctor. You won't see that when you take the demonstration exam, right? The demonstration exam that is in your NCARB account is purely the exam itself. It does not have that remote proctoring kind of shell over top of it. But when you are actually taking your online proctored exam, you will have that chat box that will, immediately link you to the proctor who is monitoring you. And so when you are ready to go on a break, you can click the break button and then tell the proctor you're going on break. You can tell the proctor you're about to take a break and then click your break button. Either way, but it's just important that you notify that proctor. The proctor is expecting to see you in your webcam, basically like this, head and shoulders. The proctor is expecting to see you in your webcam the whole time you're testing. So again, letting the proctor know that you're about to take a break is important for you to not get flagged for an exam violation. But exactly when you tell them, before you click the button, after you click the button, it's just important to make sure that you tell them.
And it also applies, Michelle, to in-person exams.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen going forward is right now you could stand up in a test center. You could go to the proctor and say, I'm on a break. They're not going to check your screen because you have no access to your notes in your locker, cell phones, none of that. What's going to happen in-person testing beginning on December 14th is when you walk to the proctor to check out for your break, they are going to verify your screen that you're actually on break to ensure that you actually took a break so you can't return to those items that you have previously looked at. But the advantage now is going to be that You can access your locker for other materials outside of food or snacks. You can look at your notes, you could look at your cell phone. If you wanted to take a walk outside and get some fresh air at a break, you're gonna have that opportunity now. So there are some benefits of this new break structure that will allow you to have some more flexibility during that break time.
Great. So one of our viewers has commented that the whiteboard actually treats shapes as objects, so you can make them changeable and rearrangeable, unlike pencil sketches. And they wanted to know if we would consider emphasizing that feature more so that candidates are more aware of it.
Sure. Consider it emphasized, absolutely. And that's something that Nick was talking about, of really trying out these different tools for what it is you're trying to accomplish on any given item. Sometimes just using that pencil tool to sketch some quick lines, shapes, whatever you need to do, maybe that might be the best thing for you. But knowing that you have those set shapes available, squares, triangles, circles, you can expand them as needed. I mean, that's there. You can change the line weights on that. Again, there's certainly no expectation that you're using this to draft a detailed wall section or a floor plan or anything like that. But sometimes just having those shapes available can just make the sketching go that much faster. So absolutely take advantage of the demonstration exam and the whiteboard inside of it to try out those different features and figure out what's going to work best for you.
All right, so we are running out of time, so we're just going to do one last question, which is, are the new ARE 5.0 guidelines out yet?
Yes, they are.
So is the handbook, I will add. And so when you go to the Prepare for the ARE section of the NCARB website, there will be 2 sets of guidelines and 2 handbooks. It's really important if you're testing between now and December 13th, look at the version that applies to that testing window. Same thing applies for December 14th and beyond. There's a version on our website. It's spelled out right after it that it applies December 14th going forward. So make sure you're looking at the correct document prior to going in for your exam.
Great. So before we sign off today, can you each share one key takeaway you want viewers to walk away with?
I will say just one thing I've noticed also on the Q&A coming through is questions from candidates wondering what's going to happen with test centers this winter, right? Because, we're all hearing in the news about COVID rates are climbing, kind of going the wrong way as what we wish we were seeing right now, and the potential of more spikes coming. And candidates wondering, so what's going to happen with my test center? And the answer is it's going to be based on the local requirements in your jurisdiction. NCARB can't tell Prometric what to do. But what we can do is what we're doing right now, which is, getting out the online proctoring option. It's something that, we were kind of foreseeing a while back of like, this thing might not get better. And we want to make sure that we have this online proctoring option available for candidates in the event that test centers get impacted again. So we can't predict what might happen this winter, but we are really proud of the hard work that we've put into getting this online proctored option available to all of you in a secure way that works for all of our member boards. So regardless of any impact to your test center, you know that you'll still be able to access the ARE.
And I'm going to add my key takeaway is really after we've introduced all of these tools, the new navigation, highly recommend spend some time with the demonstration exam. And that doesn't mean just go through it once, maybe go through it 2 times, 3 times, go through it until you become comfortable with the tools, with the navigation to a point where you don't have to think about it when you're going into your testing day. And that is, also going to allow you to focus on the content, as we mentioned at the beginning. And then finally, what this also means is if you're testing today, or maybe you were a tester, the strategy that you've been using might not necessarily be the most effective one for this updated version of the exam. What I would recommend is sit down, think about your weaknesses, think about your strengths as a tester, and outline a strategy that will work for you with the new break function, whether it's using your entire break time in the middle, breaking your exam up into sections, And this is going to be a personal strategy. Everyone on the exam that takes it doesn't have to have the same strategy. If Michelle and I were taking it, we would probably have different strategies, and that's okay. There is more than one way of effectively taking this exam, and really cater it to your own personal strengths.
All right, so thank you all so much for joining us today. If we didn't answer your question, and we know there are some questions we didn't answer, please do leave it in the comment section on YouTube, on our blog, contact our customer relations team, or go on the NCARB ARE 5.0 community, and we'll try to get you an answer as soon as possible. For more details on online proctoring, again, you can check out our website, you can check out the community, and be sure to subscribe to our ARE 5.0 update emails as well. And we'll see you next time.